Welcome to the Midwest USIT USIT Midwest Sections, third in our speaker series. Tonight we are talking about summer stock, that first theater experience for many young designers and technicians, getting out there and figuring out if this is what you actually want to do with your life. Summer stock is a great way to do that when you are doing a task all day, every day. You figure out whether or not you love it and it feeds your soul, or maybe you're going to go do something else, and that's okay too. So, we're going to start with a round of introductions. I'm Jana Henry Funderburk. I will be your host tonight, and I will let our panelists introduce themselves. John, do you want to go first?
Sure. John Stevens. I'm the executive producer at the Little Theater on the Square in Sullivan, Illinois.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
Hey, I'm Jeff Leader. I'm the costume director at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. Formerly, I was head of the costume production program at the University of Wisconsin, and I retired from that and became an indentured servant at the Utah Shakespeare Festival.
Kyle?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Schick, and I'm the director of production at the Aspen Music Festival. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. Tracy?
Hello, sorry, I was waiting and waiting and waiting and we launched, so sorry I'm late. That's
all right.
number one. Don't ever be late. That's rule number one, right? We're doing intros. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, cool. I'm Tracy Armagost. I'm the production and recruiting coordinator at the Santa Fe Opera. I'm beginning my 38th season there. I'm very lucky that I've been at the same place for many, many years.
Thank you. One of the things you may notice very quickly there is all of our guests are people who do hiring, but they don't have the same job titles. They are not at the same places and positions. Jeff, as a costume person, can look at very specific things in a portfolio or on a resume of a costume person, where John is hiring everyone who works in the technical side. So you never know when you go to interview for a summer stock position who you're going to be interviewing with. So I think it's always important to be able to speak at different levels about your skills and your experiences. It's hard for me as a costume person when a sound person gets too deep into equipment. I start to glaze over. So guilty, absolutely guilty of that one. So I think the first question I'm going to put out to our panel, and feel free to jump in as you wish, but what are you looking for when you're hiring for your summer? And you can say, when I'm looking for a designer, I'm hiring this, or a technician, or a carpenter, or an intern, if you want at different levels, but generally, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for someone, first of all, who is nice. I know that's you should be a given, but we live in a world at the Little Theater where you're with people 24 hours a day. You live with them and you work with them. So we have to know that we get along, but also collaborative, somebody who doesn't want to just say, it's my way or the highway. We all have to work together to do things. And also somebody who doesn't want to reinvent the wheel, because what we do is different than a lot of other places. We're in a tiny little Midwest town. And so we're trying to give people what they think the show is, not a new version of it that has never been, cats in space, or whatever that is. So that's what we're looking for.
Huh.
I would piggyback that. We hire 150, 200 folks every year for the summer. So we're looking for a large gambit of people. Clearly, some of the positions skill set has to be a little bit more advanced depending on the position. But even in those positions, number one thing for me is attitude. And are you gonna, work hard, team player, so to speak. We, like many of these folks on this call have been in companies where you hit the ground running. So you have to be able to do that. And again, also the collaborative spirit, because there's so many different personalities. Um, it's attitude is a good attitude is always is a plus when I'm out recruiting folks.
Absolutely. The attitude is most important. I can teach the skills, although we do hit the ground running and don't have a lot of time for teaching. I have to, I look for a willingness and an enthusiasm for the work. If they're not interested, I'm not interested either. And they have to come ready to go. A lot of our staff as at Santa Fe are returning. I've been at the festival for 40 seasons, and a lot of my staff has been here for 20, 30, and 35 seasons as well. So if you get your foot in the door, you can stay for a long time and make this an artistic home, even though it's summer. It's not really summer stock. I'd like to think that it's a regional theater that operates in the summer rather than summer stock.
Mhm.
And summer stock does have some uh, less than desirable connotations. But anyway, I look for an attitude and a willingness and enthusiasm.
I'm similar to what has been said as well, that attitude is really like the most important thing. I hire a lot of people across all the various departments and positions, and we really hope that those people that we hire end up being multi-year kinds of people. So we really do a lot of work in making sure that they are team players and have a great attitude and a good work ethic, and people that we can see coming back year after year and being happy that they're there. So we want them to really fit in. Skills, like Jeffrey said, can be taught, but work ethic is a harder thing to teach.
Yeah, especially in a very short period of time.
Mhm.
Um, I think you speaking about people coming back year after year, um, do you do you consider at all how maybe new people are going to fit in with your long-term employees? Is that part of that equation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is hard when there's a core team that's been there for 10, 15 years, which is in our case, most of our department heads have been there, 30 plus years, as well as their key people. And it is hard for someone to come in sometimes into that mix. So you do have to, how what those department heads look for, and what kind of folks they like to also work with. And so you do take that into consideration when you're talking applicants, definitely.
Yeah. Um, when considering resumes or portfolios, what are you looking for? What's your biggest pet peeve? What do you not want to see?
My biggest pet peeve is when you spell the word, when you meant to change the color of fabric and you spell it as if you've passed away.
Yes.
It's
D-I-E instead
stupid,
of
but it really,
D-Y-E.
yes, and it makes me look carefully at everything else because it's an attention to detail thing that maybe unfairly tells me things.
Yep.
Right.
I
I,
still
I
see a
think
lot of basic things on resumes, like sending me a Word document, I think is my pet peeve. We all know how to save things as PDFs.
uh-huh.
Please do that. Spelling errors, like that attention to detail is a big thing for me. It's indicative of work ethic and so many other things. So yeah, those are some of mine.
One of mine big ones is and I know the students and the applicants are going to get told 5,000 different things. So I'm just one person and one insight here. But when the references aren't on their resumes,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I know there's a mixed,
Upon request.
yeah, upon a quest, because if I see Jeff's name or any of these folks on this call, if I see their name, I know what program they've been through. I know that I can give, or if I look and I see that they worked at a certain place and there isn't a certain person's name on the resume, that also will tell me something. So recommendations, I would always say put your references on your resume, of course, check with them. There's sort of a mixed opinion about whether if it's an online, part of your digital portfolio, if you want that information out in the world. So, you have to check with that person. But definitely if you're at a conference or a festival and you've got a hard copy, there's no references, it may go into a different stack.
Right.
I know there are production managers and colleagues that if you don't have a reference on your resume, they won't even follow up on it because that's another step for them. Yeah, John, I know John probably.
Yeah, and the other thing is too is if you have 2 pages and your second page has your references on it but doesn't have your name and what point is that? I'm gonna lose it.
Right, when they're separated, it could be anybody's, right?
And there's nothing wrong with doing a 2-sided resume. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
In my
But
book.
eventually you're gonna get everything you're gonna get it condensed down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I think particularly if you have a lot of really stellar credits to share, those references on the back. Yeah, I think that's okay.
But I get a lot of people that don't even put what theater or where they were at working at it. It's like they did Beauty and the Beast. They were the scenic charge for Beauty and the Beast. It was like, well, where were you scenic charge? It makes me immediately go, you didn't do this show, or you did it in high school, like
Rockford West High School.
Yes.
Right. I was gonna say Broadway, high school, like both are worthy experiences, right? But very different scales and scopes.
Well, and also, sorry.
Go ahead.
I also, you want to make it kind of goes with John's point is that you want to make sure the information is accurate. Titles are accurate. You're honest about what that position is. It's okay if you were an apprentice. It's okay if you were an intern. I, of course, love that because I've run the program, but it shows me, growth through a company. Don't mistitle yourself because most likely I will know that person that's actually in that title. So, just always make sure that your information that's on your resume is authentic.
And check with your references. Make sure that you are telling them, because I have so many people that I'll call a reference and they're like, it's been 20 years since I've worked with this person. Why do they have me listed on a resume? It's like,
right. And I think to Tracy's point about the references that are missing, if someone applies to work at Little Theater on the Square and Milliken is anywhere on their resume, John's going to call me. So you might as well put me on there.
Absolutely. And sometimes there's a legit reason, and that's okay. You can have a conversation about it. Maybe it was, it's part of your experience. And if it wasn't a good experience, that's okay too. Let's have a chat about it. Maybe
do a little
for you, right?
Do a little research about where you're applying to as well. And like, if I'm telling somebody to apply somewhere and I know that they know Jana, like list that on there, like tailor it to each place that you're applying to. It shouldn't just be a blanket thing. Like use your assets that you have, the people that you know, to tailor that to wherever you're going.
Well, sometimes students are surprised that we all know each other and have ability to call each other. And they, I don't know, they think, sometimes students think that everything is compartmentalized and separate, and the world is small and deeply connected.
Yeah. I think those are really, really good points. Thank you. What I love is these are the same things we're telling our students in our classes. So hopefully they'll see this and go, oh, it really does matter. Do you look at, in the positions you're hiring for, do you look at portfolios or websites or those kind of assets? And if so, what are you looking for when you look at those?
Well, I'm not looking for a costumer to come in and go, I made the sleeve for this shirt. It's like, we get that you can make a sleeve. Did you make anything completed garment? Same thing with.
It did take you 3 weeks.
Yeah. How long did that take you? 7 days working 8 hours a day. Oh God, we're screwed. That's have something that's more completed on there. Even if it's something you didn't make for a show, like just that you made this project for a class. That's great when I can see those things that are completely realized, things that you did the whole thing, that somebody wasn't helping you along the way with it.
Yeah, I think not everybody is in a position,
Mhm.
maybe where at their university they're getting builds in the shop or they're getting to to be on bigger projects. But were you on the run crew at a community theater?
Yeah.
Yeah, did you build something on your own time? Those kind of things. You can create those experiences for yourself as well.
Well,
Good.
and I'm a big process person. So if the and especially now with the digital and your, websites and that kind of thing and your digital portfolios, you can afford to have more information in there, right? We can click through whatever we want to look at, right? So if you have some process photos of how you got from point A to point B
Mhm.
and the timeline, that kind of thing, I like seeing that kind of information because it just tells me how you've worked. And again, John's point about the 8 hours, 10 hours, sometimes it does take them 3 weeks because they have lab 2 hours a week.
Right.
So that's good information for us to know. Okay, it took you 3 weeks, but how much time was that? So in those
Mhm.
process photos, you can kind of guide us through that. Um, I want to be able to look at your portfolio before I talk to you and come up with questions, right? If that's possible. That's not always possible, right? Um, with our application process, you do submit that kind of material. So most likely we will have seen your materials before we talk to you. Um, but sometimes we don't. We've all been at conferences and we interview on the spot. So you need to really make sure that portfolio is something that someone can click through very quickly because some of these conferences we have 10 minutes per person, right?
Right.
So you want your best stuff forward, click it through so we can click through it. And a
Yep.
lot of times I have them click through and say, okay, just go to your favorite piece or the most challenging piece or whatever
Mhm.
my question is in the moment, right? So you have to
Right.
be able to also know how to navigate your portfolio and your website very quickly and
Yep.
practice it. Practice it with your fellow folks. Run
Very
through
good.
it with your
Yeah.
parents, your aunt and uncle, don't right?
Yeah, I think too, for me, those process shots show whether you understand this technique and how to do it, or if you got lucky with a an outcome that looks really good, but is not going to hold up long term or doesn't, have the structure that it needs or whatever, those kind of things. I think those process photos say a lot. So I agree. I agree. Very good. Um, any big pet peeves that you all want to share about portfolios? I have one.
Okay, tell us what it is.
Beautiful photos of work that is not yours.
Oh,
Like, I mean, just like here's a full stage picture of the whole cast on stage, on the set under a general wash. I want to see your work, and I want to see, I want to see what you did, what you brought to it. When I'm just looking at it like a cast photo, it it makes it hard to, oh, you worked on the dress in the back, or you worked on the flat that people are standing in front of, or the unit that isn't even in the photo. Um, so that's always my show your work, not just the show. So
More specific.
yes, yeah. Especially if you only have 10 minutes to show
Well,
everything.
and you have the best tool is your phone. I mean, I know everyone carries their phones, right?
These
That's
kids today
that's
don't know how hard it was back in the day.
days. I can tell you how, you know, so, so use that phone, even if you're like, it's unlimited, right? So just take stuff so you have it. So you're not backtracking,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
Mhm.
they're using it for everything else. We use
yeah.
it for
You're sitting there
that instead of just being on
watching,
Instagram,
yeah, your process for whatever you're painting or you're constructing, like, or if like, oh yeah, I had to redo this because I didn't have, like all that is so not easy, but it's just more
Right,
accessible now.
well, and I've never been in a shop where anybody said, no, you can't take 30
Yeah,
seconds to take a
yeah,
picture. No,
right,
never.
yeah.
right. Yeah, I think I hear more in our shop. Just take a picture of that. Just take a picture of that. Oh yeah, I forgot. Sometimes we get in the weeds of doing it and forget, but it's important. It's an important step.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Um, what kind of questions should an applicant be asking of you?
I'd say just make sure you have questions would be great. That's another one of my pet peeves. When an interview applicant, we get to the end of my questions, and I always leave time at the end, like, what do you want to know about this job or about the festival, or what do you think? And then just silence. That I can write right then and there. I know that that person is probably not going to fit in. They don't seem interested. They seem passive. They don't seem like they've really seriously considered the position. So I guess just have questions, I'd say.
Yeah, and with the phone, even if you haven't done the research ahead of time, before you show up at my table at SETC or USITT or anyplace else, do a little research. Know where Aspen is, for instance.
Oh,
Know where Cedar City, Utah is, and a little bit about the scale and scope of the company rather than expecting that all to happen in the 10-minute interview.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because a lot of times they don't even know where Santa Fe is, right? But the ones that have actually done their research, gone on our website, looked at the information, read about our company, look at who our teams are for that season, and respond that way too. Is I mean, it just like you said, you need to do your homework. But questions that hopefully, if you've done your homework, a lot of those pre-questions have been answered. How long is the letter of agreement? What is the pay? What are the hours like? Is there housing? Is there transportation? Hopefully the website has a lot of that information, but don't be afraid to reiterate and ask those questions again. I see that you know, provide housing or you secure housing for the apprentices. Can you tell me a little bit about the complex? I mean, ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I think that asking that follow-up question
Yeah, absolutely.
is the I see there's housing provided. Is that
Yeah,
a single room? Am I sharing a room? Is the housing
exactly.
located near the theater?
Right.
Um, those follow-up questions will tell you a lot about what your day-to-day life will really be like. If the answer is, well, no, the housing is 30 miles away, and they'll pick you up at 7 a.m. and they will drop you off at midnight. Oh, okay. That tells you something about I'm going to spend all day there, whether I need to be there or not.
Right.
Um, and when I get home, there will be somebody else in the room with me. How do I feel about that?
Right.
You know,
It goes with
um,
coaching.
be fun to have a roommate to debrief with at the end of the day. Or, well, I'm a person who very much needs my own space, my own time.
Right.
Um, housing is staying in the homes of our patrons. Like there are all different kinds of models. So yeah, don't assume that because housing is provided, that it is what you're imagining in your head.
Right.
So I think that's a great example. Um, and I think the it tells that you've done your not that you've done your work, that you're actually interested in this job. I know
Right.
sometimes when you're sending out tons and tons and tons of applications to place, you're just trying to get that first professional gig. It can just feel like I've applied everywhere. um I know that can feel tough, but when somebody shows interest in you, it's like dating. You got to give a little something back if you want this relationship to move forward. So,
Well, I also, this is sort of on off topic, but also don't be afraid to follow up once you've submitted an application or you've
mhm,
called because like, you know, technology isn't always perfect, right? Sometimes stuff doesn't get through to me. And if you
right,
haven't followed up, I mean, ours has an auto reply that says thank you for your application. But, things happen, right? Don't be afraid to
absolutely.
follow up. I know there's some production managers like don't call me, but I would prefer that they follow up. Just, also get you back in that person's mind,
Mhm,
right?
right.
In terms of that. So don't be afraid to follow up at all.
I'm going to interject real quick, piggybacking on that, Tracy. I know some people that if you don't follow up, you're off the list because that's how they know that you're serious, that you want the job.
Ooh,
Just throwing that out there. There are some people that that's how you communicate that you really want it versus you're
And it
just
could
one of the
be
ones they shotgunned.
Yep, it can just be a simple email says, hi, I'm just following up on my application I submitted on such and such date. If
Mhm.
you need any other information, just see if you need any other information from me. And it just gets that person
If
because
nothing else, they might
I
look through the
know,
pile and look at your resume again.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. I mean, because we have 800 to 1,000 applicants. So that's a lot of people to keep
But
track
don't
of.
be, but also on the same vein, don't be shitty about it. Like when you're sending that reply, because I get a lot of those. It's like, I sent you an email yesterday and you didn't respond to me. Well, I've had
Right.
a
I was
thousand
just gonna
emails
say
today.
that
Like,
because like for me, I'm on the road, 8 weeks in a row. I
yeah,
check my email every night when I get back to the room, but it may take me a minute, right?
yeah.
So be courteous when you're doing that. I know we all like to live in the land of instant, but that's
Mm.
not always the case, right?
And
So
it's not always going to be instant on either side, and
yeah,
but they
absolutely.
have to be as cordial, and also be like, if I
Absolutely.
send an email saying, can you set up a face-to-face interview, or a Zoom interview this week, and I don't hear anything back from them in 3 days,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
sorry, I've moved on by then.
Move on. Yep, it goes both ways. Goes
One
both
thing that happens sometimes to me, and this, I shouldn't reveal this tactic to the four participants here, but sometimes if I always say, let me know if you get another offer
I do too.
before you say no to me. And so sometimes they say, I'm waiting on an offer. I've heard from Santa Fe and they want, an answer by Friday. I look really carefully at that resume. If I know that if they say where it is, if they say it's Santa Fe, I usually say, well, then they must be pretty good because I know how they screen people. I'll look at them more carefully that if if they say a deadline. Now, those of you who are watching, John and Mylon and Nick, don't use that technique if you don't have another offer.
Right. Well, and that's and sometimes we will be like, I always tell when I'm interviewing, if you do get another offer, let me know because of that process and how things have to filter through. Sometimes it does take a couple, again, now everything's digital, it's a little bit faster. But if you get an offer, let us know. Let those other companies know. So that means those 12 companies that you have applied to, you got to keep track of all that.
Hmm.
Right? Like,
A spreadsheet is your friend in this
absolutely.
process.
Yep. Yep.
So, I often have students who will get an offer from one place and they're like, but I really want this. And I always encourage, make the call, send the email.
Yep.
If they don't get back to you, if they don't, I mean, that's okay. Then you have your answer, you
Right.
know. And it may be on somebody else and they're going, oh, thank goodness that's one less person I have to tell no. That's okay, right? Either way, you know how you can move forward in securing your job. Um,
And
it
sometimes it's hard because you'll get offers from, and then you just have to add to your pro and con list, right? Simple as
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And it's hard sometimes.
Yep. I think one of a great question to ask is, what is there to do in the area on my day off? And I think all of you have areas that have good things to do on your day off. Um, I think that's an important thing is to get out on your day off and, you know, see the daylight, get some vitamin D.
We have
Um,
2 days off, Saturday and Sunday.
2 days off. There you
I want to
go.
work there.
God, I'm gonna come your way. That's awesome.
Um, but yeah, everybody is, I mean, everybody is in areas where there's fun stuff. Of course, some of you are in Santa Fe, duh, it's gorgeous. Right, but even John at the little theater, it's Amish country, y'all.
Yep.
Like there's horses and buggies, and two-story outhouse. So there's lots of fun things to go see and do, even
Yeah,
in Central
you have to
Illinois.
make your own fun and your own agenda and things, but like Jana said, like, get out of the shop. Like,
Mhm.
Jan and I have had that conversation when she's designed for me, like to the Stitchers. It's like, take your lunch and go somewhere. Just drive
Yes.
so that you're not in the shop, so that you're not with these people 24 hours a day. Do
Mhm.
something on your own.
Mhm.
I take my lunch and I go to the park and there's a little lake, and there are baby turtles in that lake. And I sit there and I eat my lunch and I watch the little turtles, and then I go, okay, I'm ready to go back and, have 17 fittings this afternoon or whatever it is we're doing. I think that is an important thing to do. I think, how do you talk about schedules with um, prospective employees?
I mean, you have to be honest about what the schedule is, right? Can't sugarcoat it.
Hmm.
The schedules are I mean, they're rigorous. They really are. We've Our schedule has gotten a little bit better, but it's still, 6 days a week, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, unfortunately, because of the repertory situation. Um, we talk about turnaround, we talk about mental health a lot.
Hmm.
Um, Thankfully more now, right?
Hmm.
Um, which is great. So, you just have to be honest about it and say, this particular crew, I can tell you what the average hours are, based historically. I mean, because it does vary a little bit season to season, depending on
Sure.
what they're building, but you just can't sugarcoat it, because then you don't want you don't want to set anyone up
Mm.
for something that's not
Yeah,
accurate.
I agree
I
with
agree.
that. Hmm. And I think it's important to be honest about what that is, but also be honest with them about how to manage their own personal health and schedule, and to speak up when they're at their limit, or they haven't had a day off in a little while and really need one. Um, I always talk to my crew and tell them that we get everybody gets a day off a week, and we make that happen for everyone. My department heads, I don't schedule; they make their own schedule, so it's up to them on making sure that they manage their time appropriately and they give themselves days off. But but yeah, I appreciate employees that tell me what their limits are. I'd rather them have that kind of maturity to tell me that, rather than finding out that they have stretched themselves way too thin and they're coming to me at a moment of total depletion, and they're broken down because they've spent way too much time in the shop. So we don't want that. Nobody wants that, and nothing that we do is important enough to sacrifice your health or anything
I
like that.
always say it's only opera, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not saving babies.
Life out there. This is only opera, so
Right.
Yeah, we're doing
Nothing
silly
is worth
things.
crying over. Like it's a show, and it's going to happen at the
yeah.
end of the
And
day.
we appreciate the passion, but
Yep.
we also need you to be looking out for yourself.
Right.
And if anybody's going to cry, it's going to be me. So
Yeah. Right. I never cry. What are you talking about?
no,
Sometimes we do. We feel like the stakes are so high, right? And sometimes I walk around here saying, school play, school play. I want what we do to be the very, very best we can produce, right? But at what expense? I think that's always and I think to Kyle's point, like, recognize before you're stretched to the point of breaking, when you're feeling the stretch, recognize that point.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things benefits that did come out of COVID is that people are speaking up
Hmm.
and are really paying attention to the mental health aspect of it, and which I am so thankful for, because they're really, I mean, we all would work till we were into the ground, right?
Yeah.
But employees now are like,
Yep.
I gotta, which is great. I'm glad people speak up. Now there's a way to do that, right? But I really appreciate it when some of the when the apprentices come into my office and they're like, look, I gotta take a day.
Hmm.
I would have never done that as an apprentice. Actually, it would have just had never occurred to me that I was able to do that,
Mhm.
Right.
right?
Right.
So I am grateful that the one of the things that came out of COVID is that this whole attention to mental health and taking care of yourself in our industry is really
Hmm.
blossomed, which I appreciate.
But
And oh, go ahead.
but I want to say, don't be the most delicate flower
Yes.
in the bouquet.
Oh, no. Right.
You also have to, like, I can't read your mind. You have to communicate. So if you
Mhm.
have a problem, I would much rather you tell me about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Jeff, I think it's a fabulous way to say it. You do need to that sort of matching energy and effort, right? And figuring out like, oh, everybody else seems to be working very hard. Maybe I should too. That finding um what I call find that fifth gear, you know. It's a different you get tested in a different way doing summer theater than you do when you're in your own environment at school.
Well, yeah,
Um,
exactly. There's that big fish at school. I mean, you may be the
yep.
star of your program at Milliken, Randy Handley,
Hmm.
but you may come here and be in a, oh, we're recording this, aren't we? Oops. Well, and you come here and there's 60 people in the shop who were the star of their program, and you
Yeah,
got to fit into that.
right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's a growing pain to it, you know. So that
But
Well,
it's a
first,
great opportunity. Sorry, Tracy. There's a great opportunity to work in another environment among people who you haven't gone to school with to test your mettle, to see how you do compared to them.
hmm
right. And I was just going to say that you might discover that maybe this industry isn't for you,
And that's okay.
and that's okay. Nothing wrong
yeah,
with that.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a scary thing to say, right? But it
Absolutely scary thing to say.
it's that's why we're in school is to learn things and figure things out. And if that's what we figure out, you know, that's okay. Um, and I forgot what I was gonna ask. Gone, 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 gone. Um, yeah, it's gone. Whatever it was I was gonna ask was a follow-up to. What I was gonna say is, what I do find though is particularly a lot of college students who go off and do summer stuff and they come back and I say, how was it? And they say, it was so much easier than school because I was doing one thing
Mhm.
all day. So I think a lot of times they're surprised by that because they were very nervous about swimming with the big fish. And instead what they found was, oh, if I can focus my attention on a task and not, well, I got to work on this for a while, and then I have to go to class, and then I've got another class, and then I'm gonna come back into a fitting, and then I'm gonna run they find some affirmation in that, like, I can sit and do this thing all day that I wasn't sure I could. So yeah. So you learn a lot about yourself
Mm.
in that process. Um, I think a really good question to ask going in, if I were young one out there, I would ask about tech schedules and changeover schedules. Those are not necessarily the day-to-day schedule, right? We're in the shop by 8, we're out by 5, we're, whatever. It's not that schedule, right? It's a separate kind of schedule. Do you want to talk about changeover type situations? And I'm sure they're different everywhere because you're working in different types of, whether you're working in rep or show up, show down kind of thing. But what should young people be thinking about in those schedules?
Ours,
Finding out where they're going to get their rest at, because I mean, for us it's 3 days straight of tearing down the set, putting the new one up, and then we go right in. We now have a day that's pretty much only tech, and then we have go into the actual tech rehearsals. But find when are you going to be able to have that downtime? When are you going to be able to take a break so that you can be there when you need to? Because now your schedule flips from days to nights for us, and you're coming in after. So that's a big mental change when you're normally working a 9 to 6, and then all of a sudden you're working for 2 hours, or you're working in the morning for 4 hours, and then you have 4 hours off, and then you work for 2 hours while dinner break, and then another 4 hours, and then you work all night until it's the next morning, so that's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, our schedule varies depending on the department, but because we're repertory, we're doing 2 changeovers a day till August, first 2 months. Techs are, because we're outdoor theater, our techs go till 2 a.m. in the morning. then there's a changeover. So it depends on what crew you're on, but the same thing, the adjustment for some of those crews from, we've been doing daytime changeovers and practices, and then all of a sudden now you're doing a little bit of day and a little bit of overnight, situation. So it's the same thing as trying to find those times. And then when the dressers, when they join the whole process, right? When dress rehearsals start, they are working, they come in later in the day, and then usually you're there in the afternoon, dinner break, and then they run a show. But it is an adjustment because before that you've been working 10 to 6, right? So we kind of try to ease them into that and start adding some evening hours, even if it's just work calls or shop calls, just to kind of ease them into it. So it's not all of a sudden, oh, now I'm here till midnight. Oh, now what, right? And it really varies from department to department, but it is about finding those times and those breaks in there, which we help them do that.
Right.
Also for yourself, again, it goes back to taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I think what am I going to do with that break is a really important
Yep.
well, I'm gonna go back and do some laundry, right? So I have clean clothes to wear tomorrow because I feel better and I smell better when I have clean clothes. Whether it's I need to go to the grocery store because I need fruits and vegetables. I need, I need to not eat McDonald's again. Those kind of things, sometimes being strategic about how you use that downtime, even when you're like, all I want to do is take a nap.
Well, the good
Sometimes
thing,
that's not the best self-care,
few things here that work really well. One, well, I know the rhythm of this place inside out, and so I can describe it to people several ways and several times. And then there's a number of old timers who've been here on the wardrobe crew. One of my wardrobe crew has been here for 20 years, and I call her Dr. Wardrobe because she's got a PhD in theater history, but she's really skilled and is a great mentor to the young ones. And so by modeling the right behavior, I have enough good models in the shop, I guess is what I'm saying. And we prepare them as best we can and then give them good role models and check in often too. One of the things that I discovered years ago was about 2.5 weeks in, 3 weeks in, I talked to the newbies and separately and say, were you prepared? Is there anything that I could have told you that would have helped this transition? And how it's different from what you were used to at school, but did I prepare you properly? And I've gotten pretty good at getting good responses. And I don't think that they're just saying, yeah, just to please me, but that they really are prepared because of the several ways I've gone about preparing them, and then setting them up with a buddy in the shop who can be a role model. And that has paid off really nicely. But I'm really lucky that I have such low turnover in the costume department. In scenery, it's a whole nother story. Finding stage crew who know what they're getting in for, even though it's described to them, and coming back another season is really tough here. Really tough.
I think that's again, yeah, asking the questions and on their side prepping people for what they're getting into. Those kind of things. I think that's a great idea. People often want to talk about pay, obviously, right? And as we're moving toward more pay transparency, a lot more places are posting pay early. What other factors should I be compared, not just maybe not just dollars per week, but are there other monies that I might want to consider? Travel allowances, housing stipends.
Because like we provide a travel stipend,
Okay.
and assist with the housing a little bit. And those are all things you have to take into your weekly, right? Because you're not going to be guaranteed, even though some of the positions do pay overtime over 40, it's not consistent overtime. So you can't always count on that. So figure out what that base pay is. We also pay, we have parking is always a challenge once we get into performances. And so we do pay folks if they carpool people into work. That's really hard to say at 6 o'clock at night. So on a per person per trip basis. So ask about those things. What are the additional, they're not really called benefits, but additional things that are part of the program. I mean, there are places where the housing is free. Kyle, I think, is all of your housing free for staff and
Yeah,
interns?
we provide housing, but
So those are all important things. So it's not just about what your hourly rate's going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, and also, what's the cost of living of where you are? What's it going to cost me to get food? We have a cantina on the grounds, but most of the crews aren't there when it's open, right? So you are going to be purchasing and making your food.
Mhm.
That's great that you guys all pay your employees. That's amazing. I wish I had a lot of
I can't wait till John starts paying me. No, I'm just kidding.
We pay.
Yeah,
You know,
and I
well,
make a point of telling people we pay overtime, and the shop hours during the build, we're working 8:30 to 6 Monday through Friday, and so there's 2.5 hours of overtime built right in, and
Right.
that's kind of our guaranteed work week. I try and avoid overtime past that, but I say occasionally there might be a Saturday opportunity, and then during tech when we do the transition into repping 6 shows, there's always more. And I have to be honest with that in the beginning because that week is tough.
Mhm.
But it also is a lot of extra money for the wardrobe crew
Right.
and the first hands and the drapers because they're getting daytime hours and nighttime hours at time and a half.
Right.
I think it's good for students to just generally make a personal budget of what their summer might look like because it'll probably be very different than what it is during the school year where you have room and board and classes and textbooks and things, but it's going to be very different in the summer. So have just a personal budget of transportation and your groceries and meals and what you're going to need, and then figure out what the company is going to compensate you at and what kind of benefits that comes with. For us, of course, we pay, and then we provide housing as free for everybody that comes here, and we do that in Aspen because it would be prohibitively expensive if we didn't. We would have zero employees if we asked them to try to find their own housing. But as a lot of people know, the town of Aspen is very expensive to live in, so you have to also factor that in as well. So just do a personal budget and kind of figure out what your financial life is going to be with that compensation package.
Mhm. Yeah, I find with students they'll have two jobs they're considering and often don't think about that travel allowance. And if you are trying to get from Santa Fe to Maine, in the summer, um, that's a long trip. And particularly if you need a car when you're there because the theater is 15 miles from the housing, or that's a lot of gas money. That's a lot of wear and tear on your car, all of those kind of factors. So the thing that is closer but maybe pays a little less may actually be better for you financially in the big picture of the whole thing. It's Kyle's right. It's a lot. You got to figure out what your budget holds, you know.
One
Yeah,
thing that is cheap in Aspen is transportation because we have a really great public transportation system in Aspen. So that would be about the only thing that's cheap there.
Well, we cut the travel allowance a few years ago when we raised the minimum pay to $15 an hour, and we were hoping, they were hoping, producers were hoping that we could restore it. We haven't yet done so, but we have to do that. I think that that's going to be critical to the future of finding the right employees.
Mm-hmm.
And it was between 250 and $500. It didn't often cover the full expense if you flew or drove, but it did certainly make a big difference. And so it's always on the top of my advocate list to get back in. The people who I've hooked, the full timers who have good jobs other places in the winter can afford it, but the new recruits, it's tougher for them.
Yeah, I think that's a point to the longevity of, if you do want other people to be able to stay 40 years, getting them when they're early, you know. So,
Do you think that the attendees have any questions?
that's a good question. Tyler, do we have any questions from our
It has been crickets.
Oh, are you
So
guys
I'm going to
still?
take that as you're all doing a great job. You're
Okay.
answering all their questions. But if any of the participants have a question, toss it in there, guys.
Absolutely.
We got 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Let's see it.
I think one of the things that I'm just going to I'm going to keep talking. Shocker. Um, until we have questions pop up. I think what a great question for an interviewee to ask is, where are the other employees coming from? Um, who am I going to be working with here? And I think that can help you determine whether you are networking with other people your age, because there are a lot of young people working here, or you're working with somebody who is sort of, big name, well known, who you've, wanted to meet for a long time, those kind of things. I think that's a good question to ask as well. So
And I
expanding
have
your
a question
network.
from the audience.
Yes.
Good.
Where do you recommend we start our search for positions? So I guess they're asking, where are the postings at? Where do you Google this stuff, guys? I mean, where should we start is the question.
Yes, to all those.
USITT job site, Backstage Jobs,
Backstage
Art
Jobs.
Search. I mean, we post everywhere.
We post mainly offstage jobs, some USITT we usually do are more the year-round positions. But it's the network too. I mean, you can type in summer theater, summer opera, and stuff will come up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Also use your resources at your schools.
We go directly to professors that we know at schools and go, who do you have that would work? Because a lot of them have designed for us or worked for us, and they know that it's a specific type of person that it takes to work for us. And so that's how we get a lot of our people.
Well, and I go to at least, well, this year I think I'm going to 6 of the 8 Kennedy Center American College Theater Festivals. And so that's where I do a lot of networking there also with the students and the professors.
The SETC conference is excellent. It's huge, and people from outside of the southeastern region come both as employers and potential employees. I wish that the other regions were as dynamic as that one is.
Yeah. Yeah, John, do you do SCTCs, or you have?
We do UPTAs, but they've cut the tech side out of UPTAs completely, which really stunk.
Yeah. Are there what's the one, Midwest? Is that still
That
up?
doesn't exist anymore, I don't
It's
think.
gone,
None?
At Webster.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a great resource for us too.
Yeah.
I always sat through a whole day's worth of interviews there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as things have moved more and more online in nature, um, if there are, again, I would say if there are regions of the country you're interested in exploring, which I think summer theater is a great opportunity for that, right? What is it like to live in the Southwest? What is it like to live in the Northeast? As you are trying to move beyond your own area that you know, summer theater is a great way to try a place on for a few months, and see if you like it there. So I think that's a good way to go about it. What are the summer theater opportunities in the Southwest? You will find those lists, right? You will find those companies, and then most companies you can apply directly on your website. Most people have a submit here or email applications to sort of situation. Is that people are sort of nodding? So yeah, okay. Um, so again, if you're looking for a particular opportunity, go to that theater's website. which seems a daunting task, I know, because you're like, I can't go to everybody's, but
How
yeah,
bad do you want to work? Do you
right.
you got to put the work in to get the work?
Yeah, I think that's true. So, um, and if they heard you speak here tonight, mention that in the cover letter, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's a way to make a little opening connection, a little open networking. So,
And there are companies already that have stuff up on their websites. I mean, historically, most start December-ish,
mm-hmm.
but companies are starting to look even sooner than that.
I've
Don't
gotten the
wait. So don't wait is what my point is, right?
Yes.
No, I'm hoping to have my hiring done this year before I go to SETCs. I
Yeah.
look at SETC as planting seeds.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, disappointing some people, but planting seeds for the future. But because I have so many people returning,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hiring early. But I've also gotten 15 or more applicants already through the website. I just looked up summer theater directory. I remember when I was a student that there used to be the summer theater directory, and the date on the thing I Googled just a minute ago was 1996. So I'm thinking maybe that's a little out of date.
Maybe I'm gonna write it down. Maybe we need to bring that back, right?
Yeah,
I would also say if you are going to the SETCs or the USIT is sort of late this year.
really, yeah, really late.
I would always apply before you go to those conferences or if you're going to any of those and don't wait for them because like Jeff just said, right? He's going to be hired by SETC.
Yeah.
So as soon as you find the place you want to apply and stuff's available, start sending your stuff in. Do not wait for those conferences because you might miss them.
Yeah. You may not all be in the position to answer this question, but hiring designers versus hiring technicians, what are those two timelines and how are those different?
I do not hire any of the designers, but I can tell you that they are usually hired at least 2.5 to 3 years out.
Mm-hmm.
We can start conversations at that point. In fact, we're doing some design meetings this week for 2028.
Yeah,
And so that timeline is very, very different.
absolutely.
Yeah, and
Well,
I don't hire designers either, but I get a lot of young designers who think they want to work here. We hire mid-career professionals, but it's a great place, as is Santa Fe, to work alongside of a mid-career professional who really know their stuff. A young designer who has technical skills can really learn a lot by watching or observing another designer at work. And so I sometimes get people in that way. And I have changed people's careers. I have caused them to think differently about being a designer when they see that there's one designer and 15 people make a
Yes.
show.
I totally agree with that. I hire a lot of electricians who want to be designers, who I push down to.
Yeah.
I'm saying, there's only one lighting designer on a show, but there are many electricians, and you would clean up as an electrician.
Mhm.
So, maybe follow that. But our designers they're all contractors, so they're kind of brought in on just for that show. So they're brought on, for the production cycle, and that's really it. So they're not like they're not coming out for an entire summer or something like that. And those decisions are made in consultation with our directors and whoever our artistic head is for that. So it's a little bit different than hiring a group position.
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times the directors have a team that they work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a say, right? Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are teams that travel together, right?
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that a lot of times that's what happens too with us.
John, as an artistic director.
It's no fun. We are just now contracting our directors for next summer, and then we'll do all that. But yeah, I have certain directors that only want to work with certain designers, and sometimes that's not what I want, and that's an interesting road to have to go down as well. Like, no, I really don't want to work with that person, or because of ABC, and so we have to play that game too. But yeah, we'll do that, and by end of January is usually when we start hiring our technical staff.
I
Hey,
just
Jeff, I've got a
in
question.
my Google stuff, I found there's in casting connection. There's what looks like a pretty comprehensive list for the 25 season of summer stock, called summer stock theaters. I haven't looked to see who all's listed, but that might be a place to look.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we had a question from our
Yes.
attendees. The question is, what kinds of degrees or certifications are recommended to get into these programs, or is it mostly just based on portfolio?
If you can do the job and prove to me that you can do the job, you don't need to have any degree. Yes, great, you have a degree and you have learned all these things, but some of the best designers I've ever worked with never went to school for it. So that doesn't bother me. And some of the best stitchers I have were home stitchers that learned how to do things.
Yep.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think that's
Practical experience is
it's about the skills.
about the skills. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, if you don't currently have those skills, um,
You need to learn them.
sometimes going to school is an
Or
easier path to actually building those. But there are a lot of people who you know, maybe have worked in construction or have worked in my grandfather's a furniture maker and I've been working with him in his shop for 10 years. There are other ways to learn these skills um, than through formal education. So
Mhm.
and as a professor, I say that. So I think it's true. Yeah. Right. Do we have any more questions? If not, we'll wrap this up.
Yeah,
Um,
this casting connection website looks pretty comprehensive. Tracy,
Excellent.
you're listed, we're listed. Theater in the Square is not listed.
Hmm.
Theater in the Park is listed. That's in
It's
Springfield.
on the square.
We're on the square, Little Theater
On
Yeah,
on the square.
on the square, but not listed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Theater
now
by the
John's
Sea.
gonna
We got lots of theaters
get on
by
it.
on places, but not.
Party foul.
Well, I want to thank our guests for joining us tonight. They have done this voluntarily because they believe in educating folks about opportunities that are out there for them. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. And thank you to Tyler DeLong for being our host.